Hello listeners, welcome to Mahatma Gandhi Letters. Friends, during this period, Natal Indian Congress was effective among Indian diaspora in South Africa. Gandhi never ever ignored any chance to defend the rights of Indian immigrants. Likewise, today's letter we are reading was a reaction to an incident occurred in Durban. As I have no reports of that particular incident, we can only assume what had happened. I assume 2 young men born in South Africa to Indian immigrants were walking down the street one night when a policeman arrested them on the grounds that they did not have passes. Because in those days, Indian migrants who roamed at night had to get a pass from their owner or the mayor office and produce when suspected. Also, that policeman had ill-treated the Indian origin youths in the jail that night. It seems that when the matter came up before the judge the next day, he reprimanded the policeman and acquitted the youth. Today's article seems to be Gandhi's response to that incident. And the article goes like this. Indians and Passes, Durban, March 2nd, 1896. To the editor, the Natal Mercury, Sir. In justice to the 2 defendants, Roberts and Richards, whom the worthy superintendent of police is pleased to call upstarts and other bad names, and in justice to the Indian community, I beg to encroach upon your space with reference to the partial report of the case in which the 2 defendants were charged under the vagrancy law and the superintendent's views thereon that appeared in your issue of the 29th February. The report and the opinion would seem to show that Mr. Waller's decision is a miscarriage of justice. To give color to that view, the superintendent has elected to give that portion of the evidence which I wished, and still wish, to use in order to win public sympathy for the 2 defendants, and what is more, for people placed in a similar position. I humbly think that theirs was a very hard case, and that the police erred in arresting them and afterwards in harassing them. I said in the court, and I repeat, that the vagrant law would cease to be oppressive if the police showed some consideration for the Indians and used discretion in arresting them. The fact that both are sons of indentured Indians should not go against them, especially in an English community, where a man's worth, not birth, is taken into account in judging him. If that were not so, a butcher's son would not have been honored as the greatest poet. The superintendent, then, makes much of the fact that the second defendant changed his name about 2 years ago and tries thereby to excuse the wanton insult to which he was submitted by the constable who arrested him. It should be remembered that the constable in charge knew nothing whatever as to when the name was changed, and surely his very features were sufficient to betray his nationality. Had he attempted, as the superintendent supposes he did, to cover his nationality in order to escape the operation of the vagrant law. Nor did he seem to be ashamed of his name or birth, for the answers came almost simultaneously with the questions as to birth and name, and seemed so much to please the amiable superintendent as to extort the following expression from him. Yes, my boy, if all were like you, the police would have no difficulty. There can be nothing absolutely wrong in changing one's name unless it is wrong to change one's religion. To compare small things with great, Mr. Quilliam has become Haji Abdullah because he has become a Mohammedan. Mr. Webb, the late Consul General of Manaka, also adopted a Mohammedan name on adopting the Mohammedan faith. Not only the Christian name, but the Christian dress also is an offense for an Indian, according to the view of the constables. And now, according to the superintendent's view, change of religion would render an Indian liable to suspicion. But why should this be so, assuming, of course, that the change is a result of honest belief and not a dodge to evade the law? In the present case, I assume that both the defendants are honest Christians, because I am told both are respected by Dr. Booth. Of course, the superintendent will retort, but how is a man to know whether a man is an honest Christian or a Satan in the Christian garb? This is a difficult question to answer. I submitted to the court that each case could be judged on its own merits, and that the benefit of the ordinary presumptions should be given to the Indians, as it is given to other classes. I submitted that 2 men, wearing a respectable dress, walking quietly along the main street at 9:30 p.m., stopping when questioned, protesting that they were returning from the gardens and were on their way home, which was not 7 minutes' walk from the place where they were stopped, that one of them was a clerk and the other a teacher, as was the case with the two unfortunate boys. Maybe given the benefit of the ordinary presumption, I submitted further that in cases like this, the police might, if they suspected, see their charge safely home. But even if that could not be done, they might be treated as respectable men under custody and not be prejudged to be thieves and robbers. The remarks about dress and religion and name might conveniently be postponed till they could be proved to be hypocrites. About a year ago, I was traveling from Standerton to Durban. 2 of my fellow passengers were suspected to be thieves. Their luggage, and with theirs mine also, because I was in the same compartment, was examined at Volksrust, and a detective was placed in the compartment. They could offer a glass of whiskey to the Landdrost, who came to examine the luggage and talk to the detective as gentlemen and on equal terms, presumably because they were respectably dressed and were first-class passengers. The detective did not prejudge them. I must not omit to mention that they were Europeans. The detective all the way through was sorry that he had to perform the unpleasant duty. May I plead for the same treatment in cases like that of the unfortunate boys? Instead of the cell, they might have been given some other place to lie in. They might have been given clean blankets to lie on if the cell could not be avoided. The constable might have spoken to them kindly. Had this been done, the case would never have come before the magistrate. I venture to take exception to the superintendent's statement that these young upstarts elected to be locked up all night in preference to bail. The reverse is the truth. They offered bail, and it was refused during the night. The magistrate was not pleased with this treatment. They renewed their request to be bailed out in the morning. The request of the second defendant was granted. The constable refused to bail out the first. Against his name was marked, "Not to be released." The book containing that remark was produced in the court. Later, he was released at the instance of Inspector Benny, who promptly remedied the mistake as soon as he came to know it. With deference to the superintendent, I beg to say that the first defendant did not defy the law. The magistrate made no order, but he, in his fatherly and kind manner, suggested that I should advise him to get the mayor's pass. I submitted that such was not necessary, but said that in deference to his suggestion, I would do so. The defendant has now received a reply from the town clerk that the pass will not be issued to him, a clerk and Sunday school teacher, having never been charged with any criminal offense. If he is not fit to be out after 9 p.m., he cannot be fit to be a Sunday school teacher. One would think that it is less dangerous for him to be out after 9 than for him to be a Sunday school teacher who would mold the character of tender children. The superintendent says that his force has never interfered with the Arab merchants or other respectable colored men at night. Were not these 2 boys fit to be ranked among other respectable colored men? I appeal to him and entreat him to consider well whether he himself would have arrested these 2 boys. I say in his own words, if his whole force were as considerate and amiable as himself, there would be no difficulty. I think, in dealing with my open letter, you were kind enough to say that cases of real grievance will readily command your sympathy. Do you consider this case a real grievance? If you do, I ask your sympathy, so that cases like the above may not occur again. I have found it difficult to ask respectable Indian youths who may care for my advice to take out passes from their masters. I have asked them to take out the mayor's pass of exemption. But since the first application has been refused, it has damped the zeal of the others. If the public approve of such arrests, the police may be induced to repeat them in spite of the magistrate's opinion to the contrary. The press, therefore, by its opinion, can either make it easier for apparently respectable Indians to take out the mayor's pass of exemption, or else almost impossible for the police to repeat such arrests. There is the recourse to a suit against the corporation, but that is a recourse to be had in the last resort. I. M. K. Gandhi. The Natal Mercury, 6th March 1896. Dear listeners, thank you for listening to Mahatma Gandhi Letters.